Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Ahsoka Tano might just be one of the most well-rounded and interesting lightsaber fighters we've seen in the galaxy so far. While she might not have the same stamina and endurance as Obi-Wan Kenobi does with his Form 3 defensive shell technique, or the sheer power and strength of Anakin Skywalker's Form 5 technique, her wealth of battlefield experience and life experience and training from some of the best swordsmen in Jedi history makes her extremely formidable. This video will be split into 3 different sections. The first part will talk about her foundation, her upbringing, her family, her genetics, and the village she came from on the planet of Sheely. Then we're going to move on to all the training she received within the Jedi Order and during the war. We'll talk about her many mentors. She had a lot of them. And finally, we'll be talking about her lightsaber technique, her form, and how she uses it on the battlefield. Oh, and guys, did you know only 30 to 40% of our viewers are subscribed? And that means a lot of you guys are missing out on our awesome content. And we upload daily right now because of the Ahsoka series and just the sheer amount of content and information that's coming out. So yeah, why not give it a shot? Hit that subscribe and notification button down below. Although training and mindset are perhaps the most important part of any Jedi's journey to becoming a master, there are simply some things you can't change in life, and that is your starting stats, your genetics, your force abilities. Even though it might not seem fair, we're not all created equally, so we have to take this into account. Innate force ability is one of the biggest determining factors of whether a child is actually recruited into the Order, which is probably why Sabine Wren was passed over.
I have known many Padawans over the centuries, and I can safely say your aptitude for the Force would fall short of them all.
And Ahsoka, even as a newborn, exhibited a huge amount of potential in the Force. While on a hunt with her mother, she was snatched away by a Rakshir, which basically is a giant alien saber tooth, kind of like this guy right here. Instead of crying and showing prey-like behavior, which would have probably endangered her, Ahsoka has an extremely calm demeanor, and that has nothing to do with her Force abilities. It has more to do with her genetics, her surroundings, and her mother's personality. Ahsoka's mother was a badass. It's not unusual in more isolated communities for women to take an equal share of the hunting and protective duties. She could clearly handle herself in extremely stressful environments, which probably means that both during and after the pregnancy, she was relaxed and cool-headed, which is something Ahsoka learned from. Ahsoka's mom also wasn't afraid of going toe-to-toe with a ferocious feline predator with just a knife. One should never underestimate the superhuman capabilities of a mother who's trying to protect her young. But at the same time, she survived this encounter, which means this is a lot more than just bravery and adrenaline. She's a naturally skilled fighter. Despite her mother's best intentions, though, the saber-tooth still gets away with baby Ahsoka. Perhaps this animal is saving the little baby Ahsoka for a snack time later on. But before that happens, Ahsoka manages to connect to the saber-toothed tiger through the Force, kind of like Bluetooth, and convinces it to bring her back to the village. See, Ahsoka's a badass just like her mother. Now, the way one uses the Force is largely subconscious. The midichlorians in one's body serve as a conduit for the Force, but control of this energy comes from an individual falling naturally into the rhythm of this energy field.
I suggest you try it again, Luke. This time, let go your conscious self and act on instinct.
This is why sometimes infants can exhibit Force abilities, either when they're scared or angry, when they're happy. But it seems like Ahsoka in this situation was just curious about this large cat. So it's easy to see why Ahsoka would one day develop into a fearless Padawan learner, the perfect match for Anakin Skywalker. I also have a theory that being born in such a natural setting in a small village and being surrounded by life has made it easier for Ahsoka to experience the Force while she's an infant. The Force is much stronger in these environments than in the cold, barren Duraclete cities of the core. Now, right before the Jedi recruiters come to take Ahsoka from her village, an imposter comes and tries to steal her. Now, Ahsoka is unable to communicate with the villagers and explain to them that this guy is sketchy, and they even get mad at her when she refuses to use her Force abilities. Luckily, Master Plo Koon arrives just in time to save her from this fake Jedi recruiter, and he would calm her down and restore her trust in others after this very traumatic event. Ahsoka had a great foundation. She had a natural affinity to the Force, which is why even early on in her career, she was able to fight advanced enemies like Asajj Ventress, a group of Magna Guard droids. Notice, even back then, she used the reverse grip, even with a single blade, and she even managed to survive General Grievous's assault on her, all by just using her most basic training and relying heavily on her instincts and connection to the Force. Guys, this is gonna be a really long video. I've been working on this for a while, so I really want to say thanks to my buddy Congo, who's painstakingly editing this right now. I know it can't be too much fun. I'd also like to thank my sponsor for today's video, unorthodox.com. They have an amazing special just for the Ahsoka series. If you buy one of their replica category blades, they'll gift you a Padawan blade for free. As we see in the Ahsoka series, every great Jedi needs an apprentice. But you know, kids nowadays don't even want to be Padawans anymore. They just all want to be influencers. I mean, honestly, if they saw the prequels, can you really blame them though? But I assure you, a free lightsaber will definitely sweeten the pot a bit. Now, obviously, the thing to get right now is the Samurai. This is a two-piece lightsaber kit that's modeled after Ahsoka's own sabers that she built while hiding post-Order 66. Notice how the second hilt is much shorter, perfect for some unorthodox Jargai grip maneuvers. But if the Samurai blade isn't for you, check out what else is available in the replica section. There are plenty of cool and iconic designs to choose from, like the Luke or the Kanan, and of course, the flashy Chancellor.
Do it.
So take advantage of this deal. Simply add both the replica saber and Padawan saber of your choice into the cart, and the discount will automatically be applied at checkout. Check out the description down below for more information, and don't forget to use my promo code EWOK. That's all caps for an additional $15 off. Thank you for your patience. On to the rest of the video. From birth to your teenage years is when the mind and body is most capable of absorbing information and learning new skills and activities. This is why all my life I've always been jealous of motorcycle riders who learned on dirt bikes as kids, or snowbirders who first learned how to do backflips back when they were light and flexible and things didn't hurt every time you fell down. Or child soldiers like the Jedi and clones who probably snapped their first necks before the age of 10. Train them while they're young. This is something the Jedi always understood. This is perhaps why during the late Republic era, all Jedi recruits were newborns, and seeing someone Anakin's age join the Jedi Order was just out of the norm. The Jedi not only wanted to shape their members' ideology and worldview from a young age, they also wanted to train their minds and bodies so that they could wield one of the most elegant and also dangerous weapons in the galaxy, the lightsaber. Unlike traditional staff weapons or vibra blades, a lightsaber's blade has no weight to it, and so the users are unable to sense the blade with their normal senses. One has to be force sensitive. That's what makes individuals like Pre Vizsla, Din Djarin, and Sabine Wren so impressive. Yes, she got stabbed pretty quickly, but hey, she's just started her journey. The sheer amount of discipline and mental focus required to keep this blade in the right place is the difference between success and this. Now, the Jedi were able to use the Force to sense where their blade was at all times. Also, they usually had a connection to their kyber crystal, which is what powered their lightsaber. The Jedi also had the ability to sense danger, and I guess, you know, your own lightsaber coming to chop your arm off counts as that kind of danger. Contrary to popular belief, the Jedi are actually not able to slow down time or have exceptionally fast reflexes. Instead, they fall into a state where they let the Force completely take over. So in a way, when a Jedi is in peak form when they're dueling, it's really the Force that's guiding their blade. It's almost a subconscious act when you let your instincts, muscle memory, and the Force take over. For those of you who play sports or instruments or video games, anything that requires like hand-eye coordination, it's sort of like falling into the flow or the rhythm, getting into the zone. You know, when you kind of are aware of what's happening, but you're more focused on keeping your mind in that perfect place rather than what you're actually doing with your hands. This is essentially what a Jedi is doing when they fight. And Ahsoka was holding a training lightsaber as soon as she could walk, so she had a lot of experience from very early on, and she also had the luxury of being trained by some of the most powerful Jedi in history. From Grandmaster Yoda to Sindrala, the Battle Master, and of course, her master, Anakin Skywalker. Anakin was a great master in my opinion, but he was an even better lightsaber instructor.
He's amazing. I've watched these recordings to help me with my own saber training.
You should have seen him in person. Anakin Skywalker. He was my master.
He placed an exceptionally high bar for his Padawan, not because he was just a disciplinarian, but he really cared about his Padawan's life and didn't want Ahsoka to enter a battlefield where she'd be unprepared. After watching Ahsoka easily ace a Padawan test that was created by the Jedi, he clearly has other ideas about what training should actually be.
It's a lousy test.
But it's what every Jedi does.
Exactly. Look, you want a real test?
Name it.
Okay, I'll make you an actual test.
The actual test that Anakin puts Ahsoka under might seem cruel and unfair, and most likely caused her some long-lasting brain damage from, repeatedly getting knocked out by stun rounds.
Again!
But one could argue that war is not fair, and that the extreme lengths that Anakin goes to train Ahsoka not only prepared her for the Clone Wars, a conflict that took so many unprepared Jedi's lives, but also prepare her for an eerily similar situation which would occur later on in her life. During Order 66, she would be surrounded by clones, and she would have to repeat some of the same moves she learned during her training with Anakin. Anakin always pushed everyone around him to be the best that they could be. That, or he was just extremely talented and everyone had to be their best in order to keep up. And Ahsoka benefited greatly from his training and leadership during the war. But as we all know, Anakin wasn't the most balanced Jedi. But luckily, Ahsoka was raised by a village. First, her actual home village on Sheely. She was the pride and joy of her people. And then the village that was the Jedi Order. Aayla Secura, the Jedi goddess of love, helped Ahsoka understand that while having emotions and compassion for someone was normal, it's important to keep clear-headed and not be driven by emotions, for both of your sakes.
I know if I was hurt, he'd never leave me behind.
I know this is hard, Ahsoka, but Anakin has to stay behind and we have to go now. There is nothing more we can do for him.
This is something Anakin failed to understand time and time again, and oftentimes his emotions would get the better of him and also get the people he loved hurt. Ahsoka would fight in many battles with weaker Jedi than herself, but she would always allow them to fight their own battles while focusing on her own enemies first. Like that age-old adage.
If you have halflings or young ones, secure your own mask before helping with theirs.
Ahsoka, despite being very talented and hot-headed as a young Jedi, would learn very quickly what her boundaries were. She would understand when it was time to withdraw, when it was time to press the advantage and give it her all, and when it was time to use more non-lethal approaches so that she can capture an important target, rather than, separate their head from their body. In many ways, Ahsoka Tano knew her boundaries much better than Anakin ever could. And part of that was due to her watching Anakin Skywalker screw up constantly, or watching other arrogant Jedi like Luminara Unduli be overconfident and end up almost dying as a result. The cool-headed Obi-Wan Kenobi was also a very positive influence on Ahsoka in this way. But Obi-Wan Kenobi also helped Ahsoka develop another skill. You see, he was one of the best shit-talkers in all of the Jedi Order, and he would constantly talk and mock his opponents and try to unbalance them before a battle happens.
Ventress. And here I thought this mission would be unpleasant.
The pleasure's all mine, my dear Obi-Wan. I've missed you.
There was even this one time where he would use the flag of truce to buy his forces a bit more time so that reinforcements can arrive.
'Tis a rare honor to be able to meet one's opponent face to face. You're a legend throughout the inner core.
Thank you. The honor is all mine. I'm so glad you decided to surrender.
Sure, Obi-Wan Kenobi would pull a lightsaber on old Wormsome at the negotiating table, which is like a war crime in almost every civilized society. But sometimes you gotta do whatever it takes to win. And these are lessons that Ahsoka Tano would take to heart. She would actually become a pretty good trash talker herself.
If it isn't the hairless harpy. He's just another tinny, boys. Let's scrap him like the rest.
In the Ahsoka novel, we find out that during Maul's duel, Ahsoka actually feigns weakness and tries to force Darth Maul to overcommit with his initial attack. Ahsoka is able to easily absorb his flurry of attacks, giving her a better idea of where his skill level and speed is at. And because she's no longer really a Jedi anymore, when necessary, Ahsoka will let her emotions in if she can use it to her advantage against an enemy.
I won't leave you. Not this time.
I think there are basically only two individuals who can crack that hard, cold shell Darth Vader created around him, and that's Padme and his Padawan, Ahsoka. Some builds are more powerful than others, that simply is the truth. Ahsoka actually had very few physical advantages, especially when it comes to martial combat. She was relatively small and a thin individual. She never weighed that much, and she was never the strongest person, even when she got older. This makes it hard for her to confront very strong opponents with force directly. In her earlier battles, you'll see her utilizing a Form 1 lightsaber technique combined with some Form 5 lightsaber technique moves, just like Anakin. Form 1 is a very basic technique. It's taught to younglings, and it's a variety of attacks and blocks, and it can be defeated by even the most novice lightsaber users. Only Kit Fisto was really able to advance heavily with just Form 1. And even then, he got murked by Palpatine when he confronted him, despite being a Jedi Master. For Anakin Skywalker, Form 5 suited his larger frame and extremely powerful force connection, but Ahsoka Tano didn't have as much force powers and size, and so when she tried to utilize Form 5 with a single blade in her earlier battles, it's a real struggle for her. And that's because Form 5 is all about standing your ground, making solid blocks and parries, and combining that with powerful counterattacks and power moves. Ahsoka, especially when she was a teenager, couldn't really absorb that much punishment. Her physical advantages are her speed, flexibility, and agility. It's really ideal for her to kind of dodge attacks rather than, directly confront them. But Ahsoka was a hot-headed teen. This is what made her a great pairing for Anakin, and so she actually enjoyed the passionate and very aggressive Form 5 technique. But she also refused to completely follow her master Anakin. Anakin insisted that Ahsoka Tano stop using that reverse unorthodox grip, and Ahsoka would eventually abandon the single lightsaber. She would actually adopt the dual-wielding Jar Kai form. This was an extremely educated decision on her part that most likely was informed by her wealth of experience from duels early on in the Clone Wars. And here's why it's such a good fit for her. If you take a look at the Battle of Petronaki Arena, certain lightsaber forms fared better than others. All Form 6 or Niman practitioners would actually perish during the battle, including Sarisa Jeng, Sar Labuda, and Joe Kled Danva. Meanwhile, Form 3 practitioners mostly did a lot better, like Obi-Wan Kenobi or Luminara Unduli. The reason being Form 3 is a defensive shell technique. In duels, one uses Form 3 to tire out an enemy's flurry of attacks, which lead to an opening. Now, generally speaking, Form 3 has very weak offensive power, but it's really good against multiple opponents. If there is any weakness with it, it is easy to pick apart by Form 2 Mikasi practitioners who focus on, picking apart defenses, basically. Which is why Obi-Wan Kenobi always didn't really do well against Count Dooku, but did much better against Anakin Skywalker. Now, Ahsoka didn't utilize Form 3, but by wielding two blades in the Jar Kai form and using a Shoto blade in her offhand with a more defensive-minded reverse grip, it actually gave her an excellent amount of defensive capabilities, both against multiple opponents and also against blaster fire from multiple directions, just like Form 3. But the thing was, she was still using Form 5, which gives her a lot more offensive capabilities. And eventually, Ahsoka would also add the acrobatic Form 4 Ataru that we see Qui-Gon Jinn and Yoda use. It was actually kind of strange for someone as large as Qui-Gon Jinn to use this lightsaber technique, and ultimately it would be the cause of his downfall when he ran out of stamina against Darth Maul. Yoda, on the other hand, who was tiny and a wellspring of force power, was perfectly suited for this technique. If you take a look at him using Ataru, he's basically just a flying, spinning lightsaber. It's extremely hard to hit him. Ahsoka, while not as small as Yoda, is much better suited to use the Ataru form, in my opinion, and with those two lightsabers, it makes it very deadly. And as we see the Clone Wars progress, Ahsoka Tano gets more and more powerful. The next time she meets Grievous just a few years later, she's a lot more confident and able to control the battle. And she's very adaptive as always. She quickly finds Grievous's weakness, which is his lack of force powers. And much later on, she would actually take on Maul and actually capture him, which is very impressive. And of course, in that fateful battle against Darth Vader, she even manages to strike his helmet. Upon closer look, if we rewind that and play it in slow motion, it's clear she could have taken Darth Vader's head off. But I guess we'll never know who will actually win that battle because Darth Vader seemed to be holding back a little bit as well. Anyway, that is all the information we have about Ahsoka's very unique lightsaber form. As you can see, she's mixed a bunch of different styles from a bunch of different experiences in her life, and she's created a very unpredictable lightsaber form. And as I mentioned before, a lot of lightsaber fighting is instinctual. You learn the different forms, you learn the movements, and if you're wise enough, you can actually predict your enemy's attacks. But if you see something like Ahsoka in the field, it's like seeing a left-handed pitcher. It's really hard for people to adjust to it. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. We'll be covering a lot of Ahsoka. I'll see you next time. I don't know what her name is, but she's so adorable. The problem is she likes wires, and she's probably going to try to eat the microphone. You don't do it, okay? Okay. Shh. Come on. Ow! Ow, ow. Stop. Oh no, don't jump on the camera. No. No. Don't do it.
Emmanuel, don't do it! Emmanuel, don't do it! Emmanuel, don't do it!